of 19th century, metal just played a small role in building structure. So it is used as a connection device among the building components. So if we relook back from the antiquity period, so the builder in the Greeks and Romans era, so they use hidden cramp metal, which is bronze, to join the stone block. And then when moved to the Renaissance era, so the architects on that era, so they use the wrought iron chain and rods in order to support the masonry vault, which is one of the elements that reflect the architectural characteristic during that period. Uh, the first all-metal structure, a cast iron bridge, was built in the late 18th century in England. But in that century, there are relatively small numbers of metals used in the building construction. Is because at that time the steel had been a rare and expensive material. It's only produced in small batches for such application as weapons, cutlery. After newly method has been discovered in 1850, steel can be produced in the mass production, large number, and then the steel that been produced by this new method, it does have the superior structure integrity if compared to the precedent cast iron. As reflection to this scenario, which is as reflection to the new technology in producing steel, so they start to use steel as the main material for such a big building. For example, Eiffel Tower, it was built in 1889, and then it's built of, could be entirely from wrought iron in Paris. And then on top of that, there are several steel frame skyscraper erected in United States of America during that time. So based on this chain scenario, so this remark is a born of the new material of the construction, which is steel, as what we can see widely being used today throughout the construction industry in the world. We come to the second section of our session today, which on the question, why steel? Why we choose steel as a part of the material construction in our design, for example? What is the advantage of that? So it directs us to the another question, which is avant-garde impression versus modern construction. So it's been discussed before when we going through the historical development of the steel as a material in construction. So steel is a rare material that been used for construction due to the limitation of the technologies in steel production during that time. And then because of that, during early 90s, which is in 1920s, so steel is considered or enjoyed the rank of the material preferred by the avant-garde. So it does give that avant-garde impression to a certain perception. But the importance of steel in current architectural accomplishment leave behind this conflicting impression. On the one hand, modern construction that we see today will hardly be conceivable without steel as a construction material being discovered in the previous era. And then some school of thought classified steel like attributes such as natural or ecological or homey. because of the property of the steel that could be contradict or entirely different from what we can see in our eyes in the surrounding. If compared to the timber, for example, we can see that some school of thought classify steel like attributes such as natural, ecological, or homey. This is because of the property of the steel itself that contradict to what we can see every day in our surrounding. For example, if we compare to the timber that we can relate from the trees in our surrounding that we can see every day, so the timber building is easily accepted by many groups of people. But somehow, in way to follow through modernization, time by time, we have to follow the reality of construction industry transformation. It's bring us to point number one, which is the material transformation. As a child of the Industrial Revolution, steel was taken up simultaneously in the building of machines, vehicles, ships. The interdisciplinary cultivation of the steel as a new material hardly led to technological transfer among these disciplines, which is one of the beneficial industries, the construction industry. As a new transform construction materials, steel are barely used as a main or major parts of the building, as it has been used as part of the ornamentation and filigree design in the buildings. And then in reflect to this scenario, there are some pragmatic terms which is called as a machine aesthetic, which is this is born uh, with the growing of the machine-driven culture in 1920s and 1930s. As you can read, the statement that made by Le Corbusier, which is in his writing toward new architecture. So he stated that engineers create the architecture because they apply the calculation dictated by nature, and their works makes us feel nature's harmony. So with this kind of the machine aesthetic ideology, and then it does follow accordingly with the functionalism ideology. They intend to remove the unnecessary ornamentation and design in the building. Instead, they replace that by a plainer and functional design. This ideology somehow influence to the birth of the modern architecture or modernism thought, which is there's a lot of the philosophical construct behind that, and then that's refer to the social construct development, economical development. So that's you may refer in your history class, and then this is an example of the building that which previously I said that at the beginning they just use the steel as the ornamentation, but in this building they already start to use the steel as a column, which is a part of the structural component to support the vault in this building. And then it's no longer only an infill without structural function, but rather a mutual dependency of the material integration between steel and stone during that time. Okay, we move to the point number two, which is a large span and substitute material. Okay, even before the existence of the reinforced concrete as a material for the construction, the outstanding structural properties of steel allow the builders and architects during the era to build such a bigger buildings. So and then with this kind of the material and structural properties of steel, so they can build the building even bigger, higher and longer, which is one of them if larger span. Okay, one of the benefit of the longer span capability, so of course it will be give benefit to the opening wall ratio. So as you can see in this building, which is designed by Lewis Henry Sullivan, so by using the steel as a main structure, so it gives the larger span capability, and then on top of that, so you can see that the ratio between width of the window and the solid element in that wall. So I can see that most of the part of this building are opened by glass. So this is some of the benefit by using the steel as a structure during that time. Steel plays an outstanding or almost singular role in large span construction. So as you can see in this picture, this is the aircraft hangar, single story building covered by such a long span roof to allow such a huge space underneath it. So this kind of the material construction technique is uh, almost likely can be built exclusively by using steel. This is where the fine lines of the load bearing structure become the dominating interior motif, and therefore it generate a design vocabulary that exclusive to the structural steel work. So it leads us to the point number 3, which is a small section paving the way for the glass building. So as we discussed before, how steel give benefit large span design capability to the designer. So of course, when you have larger span capability, of course you can allocate a lot more openings, or in other way, so by putting more glass or opening into the design. So as you can see here, this is the house designed by Richard Neutra. So the steel columns are hardly distinguishable from the window frame. So the design scheme like this are widely applied by Mies van der Rohe, designed for his design scheme, for example, a lot of the high-rise tower or pavilion. But not long afterwards, after oil crisis in 1970s, there are growing environmental awareness of the 1980s, which is the view of the majority of the glass building were only habitable in conjunction with costly air conditioning and heating system, and then it seemed changed the whole perception of glass application in the building. So to deal with this, they start using heat insulation in between the glass panel. And then point number 4, prefabrication and anything goes. Okay, building with steel is strongly characterized by prefabrication, and then this form of construction also embodies simple dismantling, which may explain the widespread use of steel for the exhibition, architecture expo that you can see throughout the world. Okay. This is the picture. As you can see here, this is the early days of steel prefabrication. So they prefabricate the component of the building parts by parts before they assemble that in the site. So this is the building, Fritz Holler, uh, which is built by using the prefabrication steel as a main material for the buildings. And then you can see here another example, which is the Frank Gehry Guggenheim Museum. So even though you can see that the dynamic form, the curvy facade over here, but there are still frame actually located behind that sculpted of the skin. And then this dynamic form will translated into linear lattice structure. As you can see here, this is the Guggenheim Museum while undergo the construction phase. So this is something like contradict as what we can see from the when it's completed with the skin, because from the skin you can see such a elegant curvilinear and dynamic skin, but the structure that hold that skin form from the connection of the multiple linear steel column or steel column, or something like you draw the linear lines and then you connect that parts by parts in a way to form the arc. Something like when you do the AutoCAD drawings and then you zoom in the circular, you can see the segmented part. But if you look from far, it's just the elegant curvilinear lines. So this is the beneficial of the prefab steel construction. If we use steel as the construction materials for our design. Okay, and then we move to the point number 5, which is construction ornamentation, which is this is the point that we can relook back or rethink back from the ideal of machine aesthetic ideology that introduced by the machine-driven culture during that period. Okay, for this thing, we can see how the structure of the building by using steel subsequently act as an ornament on the building facade. So as what you can see here, what you see from the outside, this is actually what you can see from the inside. The rhombus shape that you can see at the facade, this is actually the load-bearing structure that built from the steel. So this is what I mean, that how the steel can become a part of the construction ornamentation. And then we go to the next example. And then this is a CCTV headquarters designed by OMA by our legendary Remkulhas. Okay, the elegant form and facade pattern for this building, this is formed by the bracing structure of the steel material that been designed and attached to the buildings. And then if you can see, this is a statement from the Arab, which is the consultant engineer for this project. The bracing arrangement is reflected in the facade design, providing a visible representation of the complex force distribution throughout the building structure. So as you can see, this building is have the floating floor at the top part of the buildings. So by using this kind of the bracing, somehow it support the structural capability of the buildings. And then this is the building will undergo the construction process. So you can see this is the bracing and then the steel structure that somehow give contribution to the structure system of the building. So and then from the outside, the same pattern of the bracing steel is become a part of the ornamentation facade treatment of this building.